It's Thursday, November 14. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The Bank of Jamaica again intervened in the foreign exchange market this week with an offer of US $30 million to be sold to authorized dealers and large cambios. The central bank said this was done by means of Bank of Jamaica's foreign exchange intervention and trading tool. This follows the recent intervention of US $40 million, which was sold at a weighted average rate of $142.38. The BOJ said these interventions are intended to address temporary demand and supply imbalances in the market. $1.3 billion has been earmarked for a major mitigation, sanitation, drain cleaning, and beautification program. The program, to be executed over the next few months up to February 2020, will be implemented by the National Works Agency, NWA, and the National Solid Waste Management Authority, the NSWMA. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the disclosure during a statement to the House of Representatives on Tuesday. He said that the program will take on a national focus and will be driven by the needs of each constituency, as advised by the members of Parliament.
The works that we expect to be undertaking would be clearing and cleaning of blocked drains and gullies, debushing, clearing and cleaning of roadsides, gully banks, medians and verges, collecting and carting away municipal waste. Municipal waste is the catch-all term for bulky waste, old furniture, old appliances, and general garbage that people dispose of in public spaces. And cleaning and beautification of public spaces.
He noted that these areas of work will reinforce the mosquito vector control program.
I'm expecting that we're going to see every single member of Parliament out there with their constituency workers, their political workers, civil society people mobilized to ensure that we can reduce the environmental factors in the cause of dengue.
Under the program, each constituency will receive $15 million broken down as follows: $4 million for bushing and drain cleaning, $3 million for sanitation and beautification, $3 million for vector control, and $5 million for patching of potholes and minor road repairs. Mr. Holness said that MPs will be allowed flexibility in relocating or reallocating funds for bushing, drain cleaning, sanitation and beautification based on the needs in their constituencies. However, a minimum of $1.5 million must be spent on sanitation and beautification works, which will be administered by the NSWMA.
I have directed that strict observance to government procurement rules and guidelines must be observed in undertaking this program, and persons will be held accountable.
He informed that the Integrity Commission has been invited to provide the requisite oversight for the implementation of the program, and he expects the Commission will respond positively to this regard. Disruptions in service from Jamaica's two main telecommunication providers have been affecting the business process outsourcing sector, that's the BPO sector. Technology Minister FAYVAL Williams has revealed that she has been receiving complaints from companies along with other consumers in recent times. The Technology Minister said consumers also affected by recent disruptions in service should contact their telecommunications providers for compensation. She said in the event that customers are not compensated, they should seek the intervention of the Office of Utilities Regulation. In a related story, Minister of Science, Technology and Energy FAYVAL Williams plans to push for stiffer penalties for the theft of network equipment.
As a government, we must move more swiftly, and I commit to working with my colleague ministers to strengthen legislation such as the Larceny Act, the Malicious Injuries to Property Act, and yes, the Scrap Metals Regulation. Theft and vandalism exact a heavy toll on every one of us, and jeopardize this country's future.
In a release on Wednesday, Digicel welcomed the plans, noting that the theft of valuable equipment threatened the availability and reliability of telecommunications services to Jamaicans. The company said it has lost almost $2 million to theft of fuel, batteries, generators, and copper wiring from cell sites and other equipment installations over the last 2 years. The final consultation on increasing minimum pay for workers is set for next Wednesday at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security in Kingston. The consultation also addresses hourly rates for minimum wage earners and security guards. The National Minimum Wage Advisory Commission started consultations on September 12 in Montego Bay, St. James, and have since been held in Port Antonio, Portland, Mandover, Manchester, and St. Anne's Bay, St. Anne. The Commission is expected to wind up their activities and make a report to Minister of Local Labour and Social Security, Shahini Robinson, by year end, in order to facilitate an announcement early next year. The national minimum wage was last adjusted in June 2018, when the minister announced a 12.9% increase from $6,200 to $7,000 per 40-hour work week. Additionally, security guards received $9,700, up from $8,854 per 40-hour work week, reflecting a 9.6% increase. Those rates took effect on August 1. The political and social arena is going through a changing of guard. That's the view of Prime Minister Andrew Holness as he reflected on the passing of at least 10 parliamentarians since the start of the year. On Tuesday, he paid tribute to the latest two who both died on Sunday. The Jamaica Labour Party's Douglas Vaz and the People's National Party's Wendell Bulbul Stewart.
Wendell was someone who loved his hometown, Falmouth. And indeed, I would suspect that he found himself in Parliament because of that love for his hometown. He was very active in the youth movement and civic life in Falmouth, and was very loved by the people of that town in particular and Northern Trelawney generally. I did not have the privilege to serve with Douglas Vaz, and I only got to know him in much later life. And my interactions with him, Mr. Speaker, have always been very positive, and he was always very supportive, and indeed sought to pass on words of wisdom and encouragement.
In paying tribute to his father, Dowell Vaz, Member of Parliament for Portland West, described him as a true loyal, courageous, patriotic Jamaican.
It is two things that I wish for coming out of his death in relation to how we can go forward. That is one, that we go back to the days of how we used to treat one another in the House of Parliament. The decency, the humility, the camaraderie, the friendship, rather of this bitter divisiveness and all of these malicious types of behavior. Let me round it off at that. Not specific to myself only, but to everybody.
In his tribute, Leader of Government Business in the House, KARL said that Vaz, a 4-term MP, has left a legacy of decency, patriotism, and an endless caring for the ordinary Jamaican.
I want to say that bravery is exhibited when the odds are against you. Douglas Vaz never entered the political arena when things were going well for his party. He entered it at a time of great uncertainty and a great sense of trepidation for those of us who were around at that time. Under a state of emergency where when you left your home in the mornings, you weren't sure you're coming back that night. That was when he chose the Jamaica Labour Party as the party that he wished to put all his contribution in, and made an incredible mark on the lives of the people of this country.
Leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, hailed both Vaz and Stewart for their contributions to the country.
One, Wendell Bulbul Stewart was a rural man, representing a rural constituency who had his whole being in rural Jamaica. The other, Douglas Vaz, was an urban Jamaican, representing an urban constituency and spending his life and having his being in an urban setting. Both of them, in their own ways, were committed to service to Jamaica, whether we agreed with them or we didn't agree with them, and tribute should be paid to them.
Douglas Vaz, the former Minister of Industry, Commerce, served in the cabinet during the 1980s. Vaz passed on November 10 in his sleep. He was 83 years old. Former Member of Parliament for Trelawney North, Wendell Bulbul Stewart, died in his home on Sunday morning. Mr. Stewart represented the PNP in 1997 general elections. He succeeded in representing the constituency of Trelawney Northern as its parliamentary representative from 1997 to 2002, succeeding PNP veteran Desmond Leckie. As of Monday, 365 people have been killed in crashes on the nation's roads. Predictions from the National Road Safety Council are that the number could be higher than 400, smashing the country's target for recording fewer than 300 road fatalities. Victor Anderson, Program Coordinator for the Below 300 campaign at the National Road Safety Council, is lamenting that more fatalities involve motorcyclists. Mr. Anderson states that since 2012, road fatalities have been steadily increasing. Dengue in the Americas has reached a record number of reported cases, with more than 2.7 million cases and 1,206 deaths so far this year. According to a new epidemiological update from the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, the largest previous dengue epidemic was in 2015, but the number of cases registered until October this year is 13% higher. The countries with the highest incidence rates, which link case numbers to population, were Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Brazil. Given the increase in cases of dengue in several countries in the Americas, PAHO has recommended that countries strengthen their disease surveillance as well as their surveillance in control of mosquito vectors of dengue, involving communities in prevention and control activities. The advice comes just 2 days after Jamaica's government announced it intends to spend over $1 billion over the next 3 months on enhancing vector control initiatives amid the current dengue outbreak in the island. Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton announced the cabinet's decision in Parliament Tuesday afternoon.
Given the intensity of this dengue outbreak, I have sought and received Cabinet's approval to enhance our intervention over the next 3 to 6 months. This intervention, Mr. Speaker, will see the allocation of some $1 billion Jamaican dollars expenditure over the next 3 months to enhance the existing program that is taking place. Our enhanced intervention includes the establishment, Mr. Speaker, of a National Dengue Coordination Committee, as we seek to include a multi-sectorial, multi-agency, coordinated approach. Mr. Speaker, the key ministries, agencies, and departments will be called into action in various ways, but in a coordinated way under this committee. And I want to just outline quickly and briefly the various ministries and agencies in particular that will be directly involved. Ministry of Local Government and Community Development to mobilize the local boards of health as part of the coordination at the parish level, Mr. Speaker. Social Development Commission to undertake community activation sessions for high-risk communities to include community meetings and town hall sessions. National Solid Waste Management Authority to expand the removal of solid waste, especially bulky waste from communities. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to mobilize schools to undertake dengue sensitization sessions.
The World Health Organization on Wednesday said it had begun an initiative that would cut prices and dramatically increase insulin access for diabetics. The UN agency, WHO, voiced alarm ahead of World Diabetes Day at the soaring prevalence of diabetes in the world, with nearly 3 times more diabetics today than 35 years ago. According to the WHO, too many people who need insulin encounter financial hardship in accessing it or go without it and risk their lives. The organization added that its pre-qualification initiative for insulin is a vital step towards ensuring everyone who needs this life-saving product can access it. The UN agency said the initiative is expected to boost access by increasing the flow of quality-assured products on the international market. The move, it said, should provide greater choice and push down prices. A heart attack occurs when an artery supplying your heart with blood and oxygen becomes blocked. The following Living Healthy report will teach you more about heart attacks and their link to smoking.
Thinking. There are so many people around the world who smoke, no matter how expensive a cigarette is. And secondhand smoking, it's like a lot of people don't see what the big deal is. Do you know that there is a link between smoking and a heart attack? Some scientists believe that secondhand smoking greatly increases the risk of heart attack and death in adults.
In this episode of Living Healthy,
we'll be talking about cardiovascular disease, heart disease, and its related illnesses. We'll be talking about its symptoms, treatment, and how to manage your health after your diagnosis. But first, here are a few facts you need to know. Cardiovascular disease is a major public health concern in Jamaica. The impact of this disease on public health and national economies cannot be overestimated. Cardiovascular disease and related illnesses are the leading causes of death globally. According to the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, in 2015, there were an estimated 422.7 million cases of CVD worldwide. The West Indian Medical Journal says in Jamaica, cardiovascular disease accounted for 4 of the 5 leading causes of death in 2004. Even now, the group of disease continues to result in a disturbing amount of incidences in Jamaica. Let's hear more about the Jamaican experience with cardiovascular disease and its related illnesses from Dr. Edwin Tulloch-Reid, Director of Clinical Services at the Heart Institute of the Caribbean.
Well, my experience in the public and private sector, in terms of really bad cardiovascular outcomes, heart failure, coronary heart disease, that's heart attack, and what they call unstable angina. It's a pre-heart attack condition. Another factor, another condition that is very common that contributes to, especially to stroke rates, would be something called atrial fibrillation. It's an arrhythmia of normal heart rhythm. So the heart is a pump, but it's regulated by electrical activity. So if you have developed an electrical irregularity, actually that can mean that the small chambers, the attics of the heart, the atria, which help the main pumping chambers fill, don't work effectively, and means that small clots can form in them, and those clots can be mobilized into the general circulation and block arteries in the brain, give you stroke. So it's atrial fibrillation. It's one of the preventable causes of stroke. As you get older, it's more and more prevalent. Prevalence rates are very high, especially people over 65, elderly people. And then the risk of stroke, once you have it, becomes higher. If you have it when you're young, the risk of stroke isn't very high. But if you're over 65, then the risk is significant. Well, I think hypertension may be a major risk factor in it. So hypertension control, and you also, you know, simple things like an ECG can pick it up if it's always persistently there. But sometimes it comes and goes, this abnormal rhythm. So we need to do something called a Holter, a 24-hour monitor that we can strap on. We often put on patients here that allows us to monitor heart rhythm for an extended period and determine whether or not you may have this arrhythmia which potentially increases the risk of stroke. Because once you identify it, you can start the patient on a blood thinner and prevent them from getting a catastrophic stroke. So it's a preventable thing. So it's something that you should check. So beyond the regular ECG, you may have to do a 24-hour monitor.
So say I'm a normal Jamaican and I've never had a problem with my heart. What symptoms would I experience to make me want to, say, come to the institute and get tested?
Well, anything that's out of the ordinary in terms of cardiac symptoms, you could have chest pain, and you can have shortness of breath. Those are the common things, or palpitations, feel heart racing or beating irregularly, unusual tiredness, sometimes sleep disturbance, and particularly in women, often sleep disturbance and fatigue may be the first signs of coronary heart disease. So you shouldn't just write off, oh, I'm just too tired, I don't know why. But sometimes it means that you should get your heart checked. So it's just being aware, and you know, you can go to your primary doctor first. If it's something like you're having sudden severe chest pain, I'd go to the hospital, obviously, or or a facility like ours that you can have appropriate tests done and treatment initiated by qualified people who know the specialty. But yeah, so it's sort of being aware of your body and how your body works and what you're at risk for. Like knowing your family history is good, because if you have a family history of hypertension or family history of stroke or heart attack, if somebody has, say, a family history of their father and brother getting fatal heart attacks at 40 or 45, and then you suddenly get sudden severe chest pain, then you have to seek medical attention immediately. So it's not something you can dismiss because you have a bad family history. Or, as I mentioned before, we know that there are risk factors for, say, coronary heart disease, which is the leader of the sort of the pack in terms of really bad cardiac conditions. But we know what those risk factors are. And hypertension is one, diabetes is a major one, high cholesterol, smoking, and family history. Those are the major risk factors. So we know what they are. So you can sort of, if you know that you have one of those risk factors, or if you have more than one, that means your risk increases. So the more risk factors you have, the higher the risk. And risk factors are conditions which predispose you to getting a heart attack or a stroke, which is a brain attack. A vascular accident in the brain is called a stroke, and in the heart is a heart attack. But the same basic problem, the occlusion of a vessel because of rupture of plaque, and plaque is composed mainly of cholesterol. And the things that promote plaque formation would be things obviously high cholesterol, but hypertension by stress on the vessels, diabetes for many reasons that have to do with how fat is laid down in vessels and how the tendency to form clots in vessels once a plaque rupture is increased. But those are conditions. Smoking, which causes damage to the lining of the blood vessels, allow cells that are laden with fat to seep under the lining cells and form plaque. So you just know what they are. So, how do you avoid those things? You mentioned hypertension, try to maintain your ideal body weight and stay physically active. And the same for diabetes. We talk about the worldwide epidemic of diabesity because it's one continuum. Type 2 diabetes sort of stems from obesity and physical inactivity. And we find the Caribbean increasingly, and the more affluent the Caribbean island is, the higher the prevalence rates for overweight and obesity. So, for example, Barbados would have higher prevalence rates, particularly among women, probably 70% of overweight and obesity. And Jamaica may not be quite as high, but we're getting there fast, So, more affluent, less active. And there may be genetic issues in some things. For example, in diabetes and limb loss in Barbados, they found that they're more likely to lose limbs or have vascular problems with the limbs, and maybe partly genetic. We don't know for sure. But, we sort of know, what are the major contributors.
I wonder what the main contributing factors of cardiovascular disease and its related illnesses are. Let's hear the good doctor's opinion.
I think it's probably obesity, and obesity may be linked to poor diet and also to physical inactivity. So those are the things. Ultimately, it's lifestyle related, diet and exercise. And it's important to encourage people when they're young to become, to have an appropriate diet and to stay physically active. The tendency now is to eat a Kentucky. When when the children have done well at school, let me go and take you and buy a Kentucky. And then even the design of communities and workplaces to encourage people to walk or to ride rather than to take a car. So all that is, in terms of town planning, you have to think. In terms of nutrition in schools, as we heard the Minister of Education, we have spoken about it, we have to think in terms of the health implications.
That's an interesting point. In Jamaica, cooking for your family or just a night out with your family does not necessarily mean a healthy meal. Sometimes it's junk food. So how can we go about changing these lifestyle food choices?
That's why it's nice to interview a patient with a relative present, especially somebody who's directly responsible for that person's care or that person's nutrition. It's useful. But you can re-educate your taste buds. A patient of mine has lost 20 pounds in a matter of, a few months. And he said, he went to his doctor and she gave instructions on how to change his diet. And he realized how simple it was. It wasn't rocket science. Well, more fruit and vegetables, nuts, grains, increased physical activity. So like a portion size, smaller portions and more frequent meals. And you have half your plate with vegetables and a smaller, portion with carbs. Normally it's like a whole plate of rice and then a spoon of vegetables, a little bit of meat. It has to change to half the plate with vegetables and, so things like some simple things like that. And then the type of foods you're eating, saturated fats, fried foods, rather baked foods or broiled foods, simple things like that. More vegetables for each meal. So you feel, you start the meal with vegetable dish and then you have your, protein and your carbs after that. So you already have, partially full with vegetables. And a lot of vegetables you can have unlimited amounts because their caloric content is virtually zero. But they have a lot of nutritional elements that are important, that are healthy, vitamins and minerals.
All right, so let's talk about genetics. You have a question.
Yeah, my question is this. If somebody in my family have an heart problem or a heart disease or something like that, does that mean that I too will have it?
Not necessarily. And then, even genes can be modified. The effect of genes can be modified by appropriate lifestyle change. So if you know you have a bad family history for diabetes, then you pay particular attention to your diet and your exercise and maintain your ideal body weight, and chances are you may not get it, because, it means the predisposition is there. It doesn't mean it's entirely unpreventable. It's your destiny, so you can just do what you want. And then you can control other risk factors as well. So if you know, like, you have a, bad family history in terms of premature death from heart attack or stroke, then you try to make sure your cholesterol is down, try to make sure your blood pressure is down. So the things that you can control, you control. You may not be able to outrun your gene pool. Ultimately, it might catch up with you. But you control the other factors you can, because it's when everything adds up that you tend to get an adverse outcome, a bad outcome.
Remember, try to make eating well and exercising a lifestyle in order to lower the risk of a heart attack. should see an decrease at the pumps at the price of gasoline and an increase in the price of diesel effective Thursday, November 14. And that's according to the latest ex-refinery costs from Petrojam. It says 87 and 90 octane gasoline will be sold for $129.56 and $132.40 per liter. And that's according to the latest ex-refinery costs from Petrojam. The costs also state that automotive diesel fuel will be sold for $136.81 per liter, following an increase of $2.89, while ultra-low sulfur diesel is up by $2.27 and will be sold for $141.69 per liter. Meanwhile, kerosene increased in price by $2.46 and will be sold for $117.30 per liter. Propane liquid petroleum will be sold for $45.47 per liter, up by $1.80, and butane liquid petroleum will be sold for $52.46 per liter, after an increase of $3.06. Do remember, marketing companies and retailers will add their respective markups to these prices. The US dollar on Wednesday, November 13, ended trading at Jamaican $141.71, down by 52 cents. That's according to the Bank of Jamaica's daily foreign exchange trading summary. The Canadian dollar ended trading at Jamaican $107.50, down from $107.68. While the British pound sterling ended trading at Jamaican $182.43, up from $181.92. In regional news, the Keith Rowley administration says it will be launching 2 criminal probes into the services provided by the British-based firm Cambridge Analytica to former Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar-led government. At a press conference on Wednesday, National Security Minister Stewart said one probe is to be done by the police and another to be taken internationally by the Office of the Attorney General into the new revelations concerning data mining in Trinidad and Tobago by Cambridge Analytica and the predecessor SCL. Young read excerpts from Cambridge Analytica whistleblower Christopher Wiley's new tell-all book. Wiley has gone on record to say that in the last general election, he acted on behalf of the then United National Congress government to use personal data files mined from telecommunication servers, which he said was later utilized to manipulate the voting public. Minister Young said this represented a breach of the Interception of Communications Act.
As the Minister of National Security, I have serious concerns. And today I'm letting the population know that I will be asking for the launch of criminal investigations into what has taken place. And parallel to that, along with the Office of the Attorney General, I will be seeking international recourse, meaning through the Attorney General's office we will make official requests for information, working along with the authorities. We are also considering the appointment of a special prosecutor and investigator to look into this, because this is extremely serious. And what is even more frightening is I have reason to believe this continues. I have reason to believe that the UNC continue to pursue this type of activity under our very noses. It continues to happen.
In a swift response, the United National Congress has denied that they were involved in the data mining done by the group, which would become Cambridge Analytica. On Wednesday, the Guyana government announced a new increase in the minimum wage along with other salary increases for public servants. The announcement came from President David Granger in a national address. Mr. Granger assured public servants that the government was in their corner. The increases would be retroactive until January 2019, and the back pay would be tax-free.
Public servants' minimum wage will be increased to $70,000 from $64,220 per month. This represents a 9% increase for 2019 and an overall increase of 77% since the APNU AFC coalition government entered office in 2015, when the minimum wage stood at $39,540. Sweeper cleaners in the public education system will now receive the new minimum wage of $70,000. Public servants earning between $100,000 and under $1 million will receive an 8.5% increase. Public servants earning less than $100,000 will also receive a 9% increase in their salaries. And public servants earning a minimum wage of $64,220 will receive in their December paycheck $69,336, a sum in excess of their base salaries. Public servants, including teachers, nurses, doctors, members of the defense force, police force, and the security services, will benefit from these permanent salary increases.
Still in Guyana, one of the new political parties in that country, Change Guyana, is making promises to cut taxes and incentives as they seek to woo voters ahead of the general election in March 2020. We get more in this report.
On the proposal is the reduction of value-added tax to 12% and further to increase the income tax threshold to $100,000 per month in 2020.
The effective increase in income will allow for increased access to goods and services for the working class, which will boost consumption and improve quality of life.
That was the party's prime ministerial candidate Nigel Hines speaking at a weekly press conference at the Savannah Suite and Pegasus Hotel in Kingston, Georgetown. The party also wants to remove a VAT from electricity, water, smartphones and cellular data plans to ensure low-income families can also afford access to the internet. Included in its tax reform policies, Change Guyana wants to reduce the tax on the importation of non-commercial vehicles, repeal property tax, estate tax, and capital gains tax to attract local investors and implement tax credits. With the implementation of these measures, there will be a decrease in the government's revenue. However, the party's presidential candidate Robert Badal believes that there will be no deficit since the measures will encourage investments.
From all indications, economic experience, economic theory, that when you reduce taxes, you end up collecting more, because especially in a country like Guyana where the income level is so low, you actually receive more because you tax more consumption rather than performance and productivity. And there is where we will balance the budget.
Badal said these measures were presented to the current government during budget consultations but were never taken into consideration. The party last week promised to end blackouts with the privatization of power generation. It has also touted tax incentives for teachers, nurses, and law enforcement officers.
Public Services Association PSA President Watson Duke says he is sorry for using a racial slur on Monday. Duke's apology came during a press conference yesterday evening at his office. The PSA president remarks sparked criticisms after he used the N-word to describe persons of African descent as he urged them not to vote during the local government elections.
For those persons, whether it be those persons who genuinely do not understand my use of the word or the context in which the word was used, to those persons, I want to unreservedly apologize. I want to say I'm sorry. I acknowledge the word was a bit too strong, so I withdraw the word completely and unreservedly. Having made the point, having gained the attention, I'm now putting this squarely on the table. We want our monies now.
In sports, we look at the latest news emerging from the tragic death of a national footballer. 20-year-old Rochelle Foster was charged with the murder of 23-year-old national footballer Terania Clark. She was remanded in custody when she appeared before the court on Wednesday. According to the police, Foster, a customer service representative of Lockheed District, Brandon Hill in St. Andrew, was remanded until Monday, December 9, when her case will again be mentioned. It was reported that about 8:50 p.m. on Thursday, October 31, both women were in Halfway Tree St. Andrew when they had a dispute over a cellular phone. According to police, a knife was used to stab Clark. She was taken to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. The police said the investigation is ongoing. And that's the news. Thanks so much for watching.